She stood in the pouring rain, her wedding dress heavy, clinging to her body like a shroud of broken dreams. The veil, once a symbol of purity and promise, now hung limp against her pale skin. Her makeup, carefully painted for the happiest day of her life, ran down her cheeks in black rivers. The crowd had vanished. The laughter and music had stopped. The man who swore before God, before family, before her heart, that he would love her until the end of time, a broken bar was gone. No explanation, no goodbye. Just an empty altar and a silence that screamed louder than the thunder above. For a long moment, she could not move. Her bouquet slipped from her trembling hands and fell into a puddle, the flowers breaking apart as though they too had lost hope. She stood frozen, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, her mind refusing to believe what her eyes had witnessed. Had it really happened? Had he truly abandoned her? The man she had waited for, prayed for, dreamed about since she was a little girl. Her heart begged to deny it, but reality is cruel. And the rain showed no mercy. She thought about running after him, demanding answers, but her legs felt like stone. Besides, she had always known that if a man truly loved her, he would never need to be chased. He would choose her freely, proudly, in front of the world. The guests had already whispered as they slipped away under umbrellas, some in pity, others in judgment. And now, she was left utterly alone, a bride without a groom, a dream without a future. And then in a broken bar it happened. A voice, soft, innocent, pure. She flinched, thinking she was imagining it. But when she lowered her tear-filled eyes, she saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Her hair was damp from the rain, strands sticking to her cheeks. Her freckles were scattered like stars across her small face. She wasn't holding an umbrella. She wasn't running away. She was standing in the storm, looking up at the broken bride with wide, wondering eyes. And then, in the simplest words that carried the greatest weight, she asked, "Did you come from heaven?" The bride gasped. Her lips parted but no words came out. Heaven? How could this child look at her, drenched, abandoned, humiliated, and ask such a thing? She was no angel. She felt like nothing more than a discarded soul, left to drown in sorrow. And yet, the little girl's gaze did not waver. She looked at her as though she were radiant, as though the gown was not ruined, but glowing, as though the rain itself had washed away her pain and left her shining. For the first time in hours, the bride's tears shifted. They were no longer tears of betrayal, but of something new, a flicker of hope, a fragile thread of purpose. She knelt, her knees sinking into the wet earth, and looked the child in the eyes. "Why do you ask that?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The girl smiled, small and shy, but full of certainty. "Because broken bar, you look like an angel, and angels only come from heaven." The bride's chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to explain the truth that she was nothing more than a woman who had just lost everything. But something inside her silenced those thoughts. Something deep and unexplainable told her that maybe this little girl was not here by accident. Maybe she was sent. Maybe when the world walked away, heaven sent a messenger in freckles and innocence. The bride asked where her parents were, but the girl only shrugged. "I was just walking," she said, "and then I saw you." It was strange. A child, alone in a storm, with no fear, no hesitation, speaking words that felt like prophecy. The bride did not know whether to be alarmed or comforted, but she could not deny the peace that slowly began to stir in her heart. Hours seemed to pass in moments as the rain continued to fall. The girl told her little stories about her cat named Whiskers, about the rainbow she once saw after a storm, about how she believed that rain was just heaven's way of watering flowers on earth. And the bride listened, captivated, her sorrow slowly melting with every innocent word. She realized that though her groom had abandoned her, this child, a stranger, had stayed. Though she had been left alone, she was not lonely anymore. Eventually, the storm softened. The clouds began to break apart, and the faint glow of sunlight pierced through. The bride stood, her gown still soaked, her spirit still wounded, but her heart a broken bar alive again. The little girl smiled up at her and said, "See, after the rain, the sun always comes back." Then, Just as suddenly as she had appeared, the girl pointed to the road and said, "I have to go now." The bride wanted to stop her, to ask her name, to understand where she came from. But the girl only waved and ran off into the distance, disappearing as mysteriously as she had arrived. The bride stood there, staring after her, her mind racing. Who was that child? Where had she come from? And why had her words felt like they were stitched directly into her broken soul? She would never know for sure. But what she did know, deep within her heart, was that she had been given a gift. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, light can appear. Sometimes in the form of a stranger, sometimes in the voice of a child. She walked away from the altar that day no longer a woman defined by rejection, but a woman reborn in resilience. She realized that being left in the rain had not destroyed her, it had cleansed her. It had stripped away illusions and left her with truth. And maybe that truth was not about the groom who betrayed her, but about herself, about the strength she never knew she carried. In the years that followed, she built a new life, one not rooted in someone else's promises, but in her own courage. She became a counselor, helping others who had known heartbreak, abandonment, and loss. She told them her story, and not of the man who left her, but of the child who appeared in the storm. And every time she repeated the little girl's words, "Did you come from heaven?" her heart swelled with gratitude. For in that single moment, spoken by a freckled face under a grey sky, she found her purpose. She never saw the girl again. Some said it must have been chance. Others said perhaps it was her imagination, a coping dream her mind invented to survive the grief. But she never doubted what she had seen, what she had felt. To her, that child was real. Whether human or angel, it didn't matter. She had been there, and she had changed everything. And so, the story of the bride who was left in the rain is not a story of abandonment. It is not a tragedy. It is a reminder that even when life leaves us standing alone, shivering in storms we never asked for, heaven has a way of sending light when we need it most. Sometimes in the form of a rainbow, sometimes in the form of a stranger, a broken bar, and sometimes in the voice of a little girl who dares to look at our brokenness and still see heaven.